and welcome to Get Rich Slow. Hello and welcome to Get Rich Slow, the podcast that challenges the conventional get rich quick ideology and instead explores what authentic success really means and how you can achieve it. I'm Hannah Martin. I'm the founder of Talented Ladies Club, and today I am joined by Ngozi Cadmus, a mental health and leadership expert, for an episode on personal agency. Hello, Ngozi.
Hello, Hannah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I'm looking forward to talking to you today. But before we get into kind of you, what you do in personal agency, I'd like to ask you what success means to you.
Oh, good question. I think, the typical response is success is a journey. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, right? That's, what the prevailing thought of what success is to me. But what success means to me is achieving 5 things, and the 5 things I want to achieve or make impact in, or the 5 areas or domain I like to make impact in is research, education, practice, service delivery and policy in the area of, Black mental health and Black leadership. And once I'm able to make some sort of impact or reverberation in those areas, I feel like I've been successful. Overall success is just, pleasing God and, having a sense of satisfaction with, family, and just seeing the smiles on my parents' face, my husband's face, and when I have kids, my children's face. That's what success is. But I do have objectives that I think are quite good to say. As long as I'm on that journey and I'm achieving something within those domains, I feel like I'm being successful.
Excellent answer. Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask you, because obviously we're going to be talking today a lot about like personal agency and leadership and things like that. And I just want to kind of clarify your professional background and why this is a topic that you're so interested in and qualified to talk about.
That's a good question. I guess my professional background is my qualifications are I'm a social worker. I work predominantly in mental health. I am a psychotherapist, a transactional analyst psychotherapist, and I'm also a business coach because I've got a business that's quite successful. So I'm able to teach other people, how to create a successful online, business. The business that I do have, or the businesses that I do run, is a online counselling, cultural sensitive service called Frontline Therapist, which we've been able to help thousands of Black and Asian and mixed heritage individuals, what I say, break generational trauma. I know we're going to talk about generational trauma. And I've also run another business called Frontline Coaching, which is a data-driven mental well-being and diversity and inclusion consultancy, which essentially helps organizations using the data in the organization to inform, best practices in regards to how can we have Black people, Black women specifically represented, across all levels of their company, utilizing, leadership coaching, cultural sensitive coaching, therapy, etc. And obviously my brand, Ngozi Cadmus, which is me speaking about the things that I've just talked about and things that we'll continue to talk about. So I think I'm best placed because to talk about personal agency is because I'm tussling with that. I'm trying to understand what that means. What does, usually agency and structure come together. So when you talk about personal agency, you can't really negate the idea of structure, because there's usually structure in agency, and that's something that I haven't got all the answers. It's really me sharing my journey and my understanding. And to be fair, if you speak to me in 6 months' time, I might give you a different answer, because with learning, with understanding, with life experiences, it develops. But I can talk about how I've utilised my personal agency to get where I have gotten to, and how I encourage other, specifically, Black women and Black people, to use their personal agency despite the structures that are in place in society that sometimes prevent us in many different areas.
Excellent, thank you. So you obviously have got a wide range of experience and depth of experience and qualifications. And something you mentioned there was just generational trauma. I just want to kind of touch on this, like what is it and how does it affect people?
So I'm not going to give the expert book definition just because we can easily look that up, but I want to make it really accessible because sometimes when you're in certain circles, you get really, what they call it, jargon, right? So I don't want to use too much jargon to complicate things, but generational trauma essentially is, or what they typically call intergenerational trauma or transgenerational trauma, or sometimes even epigenetics. So if you use any of those words in Google, you're basically looking into the same kind of phenomenon. Epigenetics, they focus more on like the genes, the kind of the biological kind of transfer of trauma and how it affects the genomes. But generational trauma, intergenerational trauma, essentially is trauma. So things that happen, really, really hard and terrible things that's happened to family members, and then how it kind of transfers into later family members. So things that happen to your grandparents, and then how you then kind of experience similar reactions, but you did not experience the trauma directly. So a really good example is the Holocaust. Because a lot of research has gone into the children and the grandchildren of Holocaust, and they found that the grandchildren and children of the Holocaust survivors experienced lots of distressing symptoms, but they themselves did not experience the Holocaust. So there's a lot of conversation. Is it, learned behavior, nurture, and is it obviously nature in terms of the how trauma impacts the brain structure and impacts the molecular structure? Therefore, when you are holding a child in the uterus as a mother, then of course it affects the genome, the development of the baby, like any other kind of disorder or function, when it develops. So that's kind of where it comes from, the understanding that if somebody's gone through prolonged, like horrific events, like Holocaust, like slavery, like racism, like even just extreme poverty, like the tsunami that's occurred in different parts of the world, like now even COVID, the generations after who never experienced that might begin to present with anxiety and depression and things that you think, where's this coming from? Because they haven't experienced that trauma themselves. That's what generational trauma is.
And how can people reframe or respond differently to it? So if someone is experiencing it, then, so let's say like your mother or grandmother experienced trauma and it has come to affect you. That is something that's happened to you. Are there ways that you can change your kind of response to it? So it's not something like, oh, I'm stuck with this, now my life is going to be terrible because this thing has happened to someone else, even not to me, and therefore to me. Is there a way that people can respond differently that will affect the outcome?
I guess to answer the question, it's funny because for most people that experience generational trauma, they also experience their own trauma. So it usually compounds and it becomes a thing of what do you separate that is coming from back then and what is currently now. So it really, to be fair, would be maybe a similar answer to what you would do if you experienced your own trauma. I think there isn't a diagnosis of you have generational trauma because it can be very difficult to unpick unless a person really went through a very pleasant childhood and there is just no reason that this person should be so anxious or so scared or so fearful. And you think, okay, what happened in your family? What's your family history? Everything always starts with awareness. I think one of the biggest reasons why generational trauma preserves is secrecy, shame. People don't talk about it. A lot of the time it's like your parents or your grandparents don't want to speak about it. By the time they speak about it, you're already experiencing the symptoms of it. It would have been good if you expressed something then. And sometimes our parents don't deal with them. So, our grandparents, parents weren't looking at therapy. Therapy was like, what? It's either highly inaccessible or not something they thought of. So they didn't deal with it. They did the best they can. And then it's now our generation that's really like, we're taken forward to do therapy. So I don't think it's something you can change as a child. It happens. You grow up, you can't tell your parent, don't put your trauma on me. It's usually when you get older, and I guess that's the personal agency, that's the way the personal agency comes from. Things were done unto me, done unto my family, but then do I continue to do unto others, or do I take some initiative, some agency in saying, well, I can't change what's done, but I can kind of change how I continue to respond with what's been done and how I would continue to, I guess, mold my life and not be determined by what's been done to me. And I guess that's where the personal agency comes in, saying that I'm aware of this, it's not helpful, it's not healthy in my life anymore, I want to change it.
So is that your definition of personal agency into this context then, that actually there are things in life that we do and the things that happen to us, and personal agency is sort of saying that I can't control these things that happen to us, but I can control my response to it and what I do with that. Is that a fair description, or is there more to it than that?
There's more to it to that, that's because this is a really big concept in sociology. I haven't captured the full argument, but in my limited understanding, in my current understanding of that, I say at a base layman level, even though I'm studying that, I would say that personal agency is the acknowledgement that I'm somewhat in control of the decisions that I make, but I'm aware that there are structures that is basically personal agency is about. I have control of the decisions that I make. I make the decisions that change and control my life. Now, the way the argument comes with structured agency is how much control. Is it the structures? So, for example, if you live in a poverty-stricken area, are you then determined to always be in that area? Are you determined to go into crime? Are you determined to have a short expectancy life? Or is it the whole idea of, well, it doesn't matter if you live in a poor area, you can make anything of your life? Where maybe I'm more in the middle, where I see that the circumstances that you are allotted in life, the structures that you're allotted in life, whether it's class, whether it's racism, the ideas, the concepts that you are brought up in life, the framework you're brought up in life, does have a lot and influences your will, does influence your determination. And it takes, I think, something external to change that. It takes maybe seeking out knowledge. It could be a person. It takes something else to say, wait a minute, do I want to be determined by those circumstances? Because I think you can only go with what you know. So if that's all you know, then yeah, perhaps your structure will determine what your life is. But if you then see that, wait a minute, I don't have to go into crime because I lived in a poverty-stricken area. I don't have to become a statistic because I'm a single mother, whatever normally the statistics are when you're raised with single parents, etc. I have some level of agency. I can see the structures. They are very... They seem all knowing, foreboding, but there's a little gap. In that gap, I'm running through that gap. So I kind of see it in that way, where I'm not denying the structures in place, and I think they actually can be very deterministic for people, because you see it when you go to other countries. Some people don't know about anything around in the world, and they are kind of happy in circumstances that we know we wouldn't be happy in, but because we have knowledge, we have an awareness that there's actually there's better things out there for you, right? That's why Nigeria and other really, obviously Nigeria is a complicated system, but but there's countries like Nigeria and other countries who are, have a lot of poverty and that, and they're happy. But some of them are like, I could not be happy in that situation, because we know what it is to have free Wi-Fi and to free water. But if all you know is struggle, then all you know is struggle, right? Then you're not really looking to anything else. So I kind of lay in the middle with where I am, with what I think. But I'm sure I'm growing into personal agency and structure. And if you do a lot of research, if you just put that in Google, you think, oh my God, you'll get overwhelmed with the back and forth. But there is a really important back and forth, because I think it's really, especially as a Black woman, I have to really ask myself, am I determined by the colour of my skin and by my gender, or is there some personal agency? Am I able to carve out a life for myself despite the circumstances that I was born into that I did not control? I couldn't control that my mum took me from one country to another. I could not control that I was born Black, that I was born female. I couldn't control that my mum became a single parent. But what I could control when I got 18, 19, 20 was, I'm going to seek an education. I'm going to, invest in myself. I'm going to seek knowledge.
So obviously, personal agency is a really positive thing, because it enables you to take control of your life and to maybe overcome things that might have held you back. Why do some people struggle with that? What prevents some people from having personal agency, and how can they overcome that?
Again, I love it, because some of the questions that we've talked about really align. So I'm saying things that I know are going to be talked about after. But I guess it's to do with self-efficacy. And yeah, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the idea of the self. It's kind of like the perception that you have have enough resources allocated to do what you want to do. You have the ability to do what you want to do. And the difference between self-efficacy and agency is that agency is the ability to do it, and self-efficacy is the perception that you have to be able to do it. And I think a lot comes from that. A lot comes from our self-belief on ourselves. If you come from traumatic backgrounds, if you don't see anybody potentially that is able to make it out of the trenches, for example, then you have to be a pioneer. There's a difference between a leader and a pioneer. A pioneer goes where nobody's ever gone before, right? Leaders can also be pioneers, but leaders usually, we'll talk about that. But pioneers usually are those that go where no one has gone before. It's a special kind of quality to be a pioneer. Most people are not pioneers, but they will, once they see a path has gone, even if it's small, they can kind of jump onto that. So I think for most people, they're not open. Their eyes have not been open to what is out there. I'm trying to think of the word, the alternatives that are out there. If all you see is the trenches, then that's all you're going to know. So I think with a lot of people, and I like to say this, media, people say, a lot of people will tell you that, you know, you're a statistic, you're going to be that. You know, I kind of was told that in school to a degree, you know, you're going to do this. You know, you're told because of this experience or because you're doing this, you're going to be this, rather than saying, look, I don't want you to be this. You know, stop behaving in a way that's going to be a statistic. But a lot of people, particularly a lot of black people, black boys, black women, people, immigrants, you know, of all types, you know, it could be a white immigrant, are basically told, because you can't speak English, because you come from another country, because your country's war-torn, because you're Muslim, because you're black, basically your options are limited, rather than saying, no, wow, you've got strength, you've got adversity that you can overcome. Not many people can go from one country to another, not speak English, and then learn English within 6 months, you know. You can do so, but we don't necessarily get inculcated like that in school, I think. So school has a really, really big, I think, big responsibility, and unfortunately doesn't really create a lot of personal agency. We become like robots. It's like you do maths, you do English. If you are anything different out of the outlier, you're kind of made and forced to be like everybody else. So I think school, and obviously family, but I think school has a lot to do with it, because you go from primary school to secondary school to college to university, this linear way. And like me, I didn't fit that system. I had to learn to fit the system, but I didn't fit the system. And it was either fit the system or be outcasted. And I didn't want to be outcasted. So I fit the system. I think a lot of people go through that. And then those that are outcasted, you don't know where they are. They end up not really good, because they don't fit the system. They don't get the support that's necessary. So being bad to a degree, I got more support. Then either you're good or bad, you got support. If you were anything in the middle or average, I don't know where those people are. They're kind of just floating in the atmosphere. I don't know if I answered the question. So if you can ask the question again, maybe I'll answer it.
Well, no, I think you sort of have. It sounds like that, you know, like as you say, you can be in an environment whereby you're told this is the truth, or you accepted truth, but it takes an exception. So it might take a teacher who sees something in you, or just tells you something, or it could take someone who looks like you who goes and breaks through. It could take a pioneer. Let's say you see someone go off to university when no one, you know, in your environment goes to university, that enables you to see that light. So it sounds like that if you don't have personal agency, in order to have it, you either need to be a pioneer. There needs to be a pioneer that you can see, or someone needs to give you that hope. Someone needs to spread that out to you. You talk about leaders. What do you think makes a good leader?
I think there's so many things that make a good leader, but I like to define it as in an authentic and potent. So you have to have authenticity and be potent. A leader that's present. Because, you know, you said a good leader. Okay, I was going to say leaders don't have to be good. They just have to be leader, right? You can arguably that Hitler was a leader. Was he good? But, you know, depending on what side of history you're in, you know, was he good or bad? But, okay, what makes a good leader is the same, but obviously has better qualities than, you know, trying to annihilate people. So it would be, you know, compassionate, you know, being a visionary, being purposeful, being collaborative, you know, being accountable, and being clear with what they are doing. I think a lot of leaders are not really clear. They leave a lot of ambiguity. And, you know, and obviously my faith has it. I also think being a servant, you know, being humble. But those are my qualities. Somebody else will say other qualities, because it could be authoritarian, you know, be more this, be more that. It depends on how you look at, you know, leadership. That's what I would say. But I think the key thing to make a leader, irrespective of good or bad, is authenticity and potency. A leader that's not potent, it's not memorable. You know, there's no presence. There's nothing about them that makes you want to follow them. Because potency links to influence. If you've got potency, you're likely to influence people. Authenticity, I say, is an evolving spectrum, because some people say authenticity is static. It's not. It's not I am what I am and you just accept who I am. Authenticity is being okay with what you are today and knowing that it might change tomorrow, but being able to share with what you are today. So that's why I said, if you ask me this in 6 months, I might give you totally different answers, because I'm not going to be the same person in 6 months' time, but I'm still authentic, because I'm being authentically me with what I am right now, Tuesday the 8th of November. Where that will be in March, 2023, I don't know. And I think a lot of times we have this sense of authenticity is just I can't change. You got to accept me how I am. And that's no. That's not authenticity. That's just being stubborn, being unwilling to change. Authenticity is about, accepting who you are right now, but being willing to change, but not changing your core values, and trying to live principally, but also adapting to the current times that you're in terms of, if you're working with different types of people, etc., etc. So that's what I would say. I think there's two key things I think make a leader, irrespective if they're good leader or bad leader, if they're effective leader or, a redundant leader, whatever term you want to put, adjective you want to use to describe the leader. A leader is authentic and potent. Because you could arguably say that Hitler was authentic. He authentically hated Jews. He authentically hated people that were not part of the Aryan race. Now, would we say that's a good thing? No, of course it isn't a good thing. But he died fighting a particular cause that he believed in. A lot of leaders are not willing to stand the truth. They are just there for the moment, and then they quickly change their mind. Their values change, and what have you. So that's what I would define as a leader.
Thank you. And I love I never thought about it this way. I love how you differentiate between pioneers and leaders. And actually, when you think about it, pioneers don't always make great leaders, because to be a pioneer, there are certain characteristics. You need to believe in something other people don't believe in and dogmatically pursue it, sometimes quite selfishly, to put your own desires above others. And actually, sometimes we need a pioneer to go first, and then the leaders follow, and they're the ones that can bring other people with them and open that kind of gap the pioneer has made wider. And I think sometimes that's why you see...
Sorry.
You see some like pioneers who maybe will start a brilliant, groundbreaking business, but actually be terrible business people because they're not good leaders.
Yes.
But they had to kind of, and it's then stepping back, going, I've made this, but now I have to walk away and let someone else take over.
Exactly.
I think that's a really good differentiation.
And most pioneers, there's some pioneers that but a lot of pioneers, I can't remember. Yeah, a lot of pioneers, unfortunately don't get the recognition that maybe they deserve, because that's the whole idea. You create the first road, but those that come after you are the ones that kind of, take it further. And that's sometimes the risk of being a pioneer. So it's good to be a pioneer, but just also know that being a pioneer, you may not become the legends that you think you deserve. It could be those that come after you that take the legendary status, but always remember that you carved the way. So, but yeah, a pioneer can be a leader, but not all leaders are pioneers. And yeah, she said pioneers literally do something that's not really been done before.
And I think Xerox is an example. It might not be, so I apologize that's wrong. But there are cases in history whereby a company was created by someone who made something groundbreaking, made an invention, but then another Me Too company came along, and I think Xerox is one of those examples, that became phenomenally successful, and the pioneer's business did not, because the pioneer was the one that, you say, broke the ground, but the other person made the road wider. You talked a lot about, setbacks. So we talked about, you might you might be in a single parent family, you might grow up in an environment whereby people don't go to university, for example, or you could have grow into a fortunate, privileged existence, and things happen to you. And someone could be listening to this and feeling like it's okay, it's all well and good for people with who are in fortunate positions to talk about personal agency, but what about setbacks? And I want to ask you whether you think that struggle or setbacks can ever be important or helpful. Are they always negative, or can they actually be a good thing sometimes?
Oh yeah, they're negative in the moment, but setbacks are never great in the moment, but they can be positive depending on how you utilize them. So, me being brought up in a single parent household, me going through abuse, me being bullied. Oh, no. If you asked me to do my life again, I'd probably say I wouldn't want to go through that. It was terrible. But I've utilized that. I've learned from that. I've obviously had therapy. Those adversities have made me who I am, if I was born again, then I could go through another adversity to make me who I am in a different way. But the point is that setbacks, tragic incidents, situations that occur, they're not pleasant in the moment. There's no, it's not, oh, this is going to make you stronger. You don't think you want to hear that in the moment. But after a while, they either break you or make you. And I know it sounds so cliche, but that really is the case. It really can either break you or make you. I haven't finished watching it, but what's his name? Dame Dash. I don't know if you've seen it on The Diary of a CEO. With Stephen Bartlett, and he says something quite similar. He says the idea that, he says that all the successful people that he knows, they've had to go through something to be, successful. And I was speaking to somebody at a summit that I went to, and he said that when you meet highly successful people, and obviously some of them have got really major issues, but there's something that's spurring them on, whether it's the fear of poverty, whether it's to, whatever it is, whether it's to get their family out of a situation, whatever it is, there's something that happens that you don't like, that's unpleasant. Is that I cannot go through that again. I'm going to do darn well to make sure. So I think if you're experiencing a setback now, you have to experience that now. My therapist hat on, you have to sit with that. You can sit with that with a therapist. Don't try and do this on your own. It's not something you can do on your own. Seek out help, seek out support. And as you go through those processes, you're trying to know who you are as a person. You might go through a setback and go, I don't really care about money. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Asia and help people. You might confidently go, I want to do this. I want to do that. So you've got to go through things. And then when you come out the other side, who are you on the other side? And then who are you is what then gears you up to whatever trajectory you want to go on. So yeah, setbacks are positive usually after the fact, after you've made something out of it, not during the moment.
I absolutely agree. This is one of the things I really believe about, about life. And when I think wisdom and experience don't come from good times, they come from tough times. And
Yep.
The personal qualities that you find to take you through it. But I think also gratitude and inner peace comes from that, because when you've been in a really dark place and come out of it, you do appreciate things more. If everything's always been easy, it's harder to not fall into dissatisfaction, I think. But, when you don't have to look that far back to remember darker days, when you'd be grateful for the simplicity of just a normal day, I think it does give you an inner peace and gratitude that I don't think that it's always easy to have otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think so.
What about, so coming from like your background and are there specific things that you look back at now, or a situation where you think I can think about the things that taught me or the way that made me? And yes, I would never, as you say, hard times are never fun living through them, and you'd never want to repeat them. But are there specific times in your life or setbacks where you think, I am retrospectively glad that happened because I can see that I wouldn't have had these things today because of it?
Yeah, I guess, in a weird way, my depression and suicidal thoughts that I had for most of my life is something that, creating a mental health service and doing the work that I currently do, without that, I don't think I'd have the empathy. I also didn't have the depth of insight, because I don't always have to tell people, but because of the substance that I've experienced, it's very easy for me to connect with somebody. And it's not even connect people that have gone through it, connect people that are unwilling to share that they've gone with it. Sometimes you can see somebody, you just know they've gone through a hard life, but they're very defended and they're very guarded. And those are the hard people to connect with. I can connect with those people because I was once that. I just wasn't in that. Mine wasn't in an unpleasant way. So when I was guarded and defended, I was just a very good deflector. But because of my personality, it kind of probably buttressed. It wasn't as bad. Someone goes, hey, how are you? I'm like, oh, how are you, girl? What's going on? Whereas, why are you asking me this? Or, being quite resistant. So it makes me able to empathize with people who are misunderstood, because I also felt a long time I was misunderstood as well. But yeah, I think my experience, and I think it's really important to say that not everybody goes through, I'm depressed, so I'm going to do something for depression. It doesn't always happen like that. You kind of, that's where personal agency is weird, that you do decisions that you're unaware of at the time and that lead you to this. So my decision to start off a mental health service wasn't even because, I'm depressed and I'm anxious, it was because of a person seeking services from me. I couldn't provide that, and I was so frustrated and angry. But I can see how my trajectory led me to this point. Although it wasn't me sitting there going, I'm depressed and anxious, I want to do something to support people that, that I'm like myself in that way. It wasn't that direct. So, but without me going through those experiences and kind of overcoming that, understanding that, I wouldn't be able to talk about how I've grown from adversity, how even in the midst of those experiences, I still strove. So even though I was depressed, that's again, you shot an agency. The mental structure of depression and suicidality did not stop me from activating my personal agency and being successful. Though there was probably a disconnect with how I really felt about it. I was constantly not satisfied, because when you're depressed and suicidal, your successes are not great. Even everyone else can see it, but now I can actually appreciate. I can now appreciate what I've done, and also think, oh my God, I did that despite all of those things. I mean, so if I can do that, if I can have a knife to my belly but not go through it, but then the next day do whatever I did, to achieve all the things I achieved. oh my God, there's nothing that can stop me. The next, obviously I don't want anything to happen, but the death of my mum, hopefully many, many years to come, I can get through it. The death of another loved person, I can get through it. I don't know, the loss of something else, I can get through it. It gives me evidence, and I guess the whole idea of the self-belief that whatever adversity that I'm not looking forward to experiencing in the future happens, if I can get through most of my young life being severely depressed and suicidal, I can get through most things.
Definitely. And how important in all of this is self-belief? And it's something you kind of talked there about belief. And if someone lacks self-belief, because it's such a fundamental thing, are there ways they can build it?
Yes, I love what Stephen Bartlett said. So I'm stealing what he said. Evidence. You know, I really believe self-belief comes from evidence, because I don't believe you look in the mirror and going, I can do this. You know, I have the belief. So, you know, now I can tell you, and obviously this therapy helps as well. So therapy and having constant feedback by people. Even just a few weeks ago, I said, oh, you know, I'm a better writer than speaker. And several people, when I said that in the audio, just off the cuff said, oh my God, no. I've seen you speak. You're a good speaker. So now I won't say that. Now, do I fully believe it yet? Not fully. It's like 80% there. But the more I constantly get told I'm a good speaker, the more I'm like, actually, I'm a good speaker. I am a good speaker. And I think sometimes we want to feel things ourselves, but I believe that external validation is important. Now, you have to be careful with that. I'm not saying that, you know, you rely on it so much because you don't want to be moved by people say, but we don't live in an island, so I can't sit here and just believe in myself. Some people have that, and that could be a bit narcissistic, you know, a big inflated ego. But the idea that you just believe, you know, okay, how do you know that you're a good runner? Because you run and you break a record, and someone says, you ran at 9.5. The person that ran before you, the fastest man in the world, did 9.6, 9.5. You don't just run and say, I know I'm fast. You have to be told and break something. There has to be measurement. And that's what I mean. You build up evidence. So, and evidence, that's not just you deciding the evidence. So if I judge myself by myself, I would probably say I'm terrible at writing, terrible at speaker. But when I get my grades back, oh, I'm actually a good writer. When I get the feedback, I'm actually a good writer. When I do speaking engagements, oh, you spoke really well. You write that down. You make notes of that. Then you also do think about yourself, like, how did I think I did? Did I think could I have done better, etc.? But I think you have a combination of what you think, measured with what other people think, and you begin to build that. So in any area where you're lacking self-belief, then you're lacking evidence, or you're seeing the evidence and you're denying it, or unfortunately the evidence is telling you that maybe, because I've got to be real, like a singer, I thought I could sing and I couldn't sing. The evidence showed me I couldn't sing. I had to believe that. It took me a couple of years to believe I couldn't sing. But once I realised that nobody cared about my voice, no one told me I couldn't sing. I just didn't get the reaction I wanted. And I realised that it's because I was a child that people looked at me and people thinking, oh, bless her, she's singing. So I just took that as they think I can sing. But when I was in secondary school and I was singing, they would just look at someone else. Then it began to realise, and then I recorded myself, and then I heard my voice. I didn't believe it was me, and then I realised that actually it is me, and I can't sing. That was evidence, you know. So you have to build up evidence, and it's painful. It can be painful because there'll be something that you think you're really good at, you're not really good at, and there'll be something that you'll be shocked at, that you don't think you're good at, but you're really, really good at. So it's also be very honest to appraise yourself and be saying, answers you may get, you may not like, but be willing to accept them. I never thought I'd be a good speaker because I have a bit of a lisp. I never thought I'd be a good writer because I was really bad at spelling. And in secondary school, I was doing like primary school, like, you know, I don't know what you call it, but the thing that you did in primary school, I did in secondary school because I was so bad at spelling, my writing was horrible. So to be told that I'm a really good writer now, to be told I'm a good speaker, well, it came from hard work. But if you told me that as a child, I would have laughed at you because that was not my evidence. My evidence showed otherwise. I'll get told you're not speaking well, speak properly, you're not writing well. So the evidence as a child wasn't good, but I worked on that unknowingly because I wasn't trying to be a better speaker or better writer. I just wanted to do well in school. I worked on that, and now the things that I was told I wasn't good at the time, because the evidence showed that, the evidence showed otherwise. I am better at speaking. Am I great? No, I can get better, but I am a good speaker and I'm a good writer and I want to get better at it. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
No, it does. And by the way, I am also a terrible singer, but my family has always told me, so I never had any evidence I was a good singer. But no, I love that. I love the idea of like the external validation, because often, like, we tend to internalize the bad things people say about us. Oh, you were rubbish at that, or people aren't always good at telling people what they think. There's an exercise I used to do in one of my courses with people, and I would say, go and find like 3 people and ask them to write down 5 things you're really good at. And it was, I mean, people were really tearful when they did this exercise, because people had never said these things to them and they found out stuff about themselves. And I think that's a really good thing to do, because, as you say, that external evidence from someone else saying, I've noticed that you're a really good writer, or I've noticed that, that you're a really good singer, and no one's going to say it to either of us. But I think it's a really good thing to do, because it can make yourself feel really good about yourself, and then maybe focus more lean towards the things that comes up. But I want to ask you, like, one more. You've shared like so much. I love all the insight that you've shared in this, and I've learned lots from hearing you talk. But I want to ask you one more really important question, because there might be someone listening to this right now that is struggling, and they don't know necessarily what to do. That they might come from a background that's very difficult, or they might just be really having a hard time right now. What would your advice be for someone who's finding it difficult at the moment?
Okay, so my advice would be, to find it difficult at the moment, is, seek out and get help. I really believe you cannot, I love this, I keep saying this everyone, I keep saying it. You cannot see the frame when you're in the picture. You cannot see the frame when you're in the picture. So you cannot come out of your situation on your own. You might think you do, you might say, I've done it in the past, but then you look and really go, okay, but I've gotten now into another situation, right? So you need another party. And I would recommend a therapist. But if you feel like you're not into therapy, then maybe a coach. It's not even if a mentor. I just think something in a therapeutic and safe space where you can get a mirror up to yourself. We are not good at appraising ourselves. So there's level of self-reflection people talk about on Instagram, and you see it on social media. I think it's lie, it's Ponzi. It only works when you've done work with somebody else, and then you're able to take the work that you've done and continue. You can't self-reflect on your own, because, as you can see, as human beings, we're very fallible. So usually, if you're feeling bad at yourself and you're in a bad situation, you are being very heavily critical about yourself, feeling really, really bad about yourself. You can't see the woods for the trees. I always say to people, if you're in that situation now and you've been in that for a while, I don't know what more you think you can do to get out of that situation. So I think you've got to take a very brave decision, because it is a brave decision. It is a bold decision. It is a risk. To say, I want to find somebody. You're not putting your life in their hands. You're actually saying, but they say two heads are better than one. You're actually saying, I need a second head. I need a second head. Where a problem shared is a problem halved, right? I need someone else to support me in this process. Now, I also want to warn you, it's not a magic wand. You can go to therapy tomorrow and still feel bad. You might even feel worse. You're going to go through, I say, short-term pain for long-term relief. Right, but what a lot of us do when we're in bad situations is we go for short-term relief but long-term pain. So we rather deal with it ourselves, feel really good, suppress, get on with it, put on our face. It feels really good. You're like, yes, I've come out of this corner. That's a short-term relief, but you're creating long-term issues. So I would say therapy, finding the right therapist that fits you is really, really important. The same way you'll go to different shops to find the right outfit is the same way you got to go through different therapists to find the right therapist, to find the right fit, so you can begin to take the journey, a painful one, but a rewarding one and a worthwhile one, to say, I no longer want to be the same person I currently am in this situation. I want to be a new me, whatever that new me is. I want to evolve into something else. Even if the situation still is happening, because some situations you go in therapy happy, they're external, you can't change them. If you're going through a divorce, your therapy isn't going to stop the divorce, potentially, may do, may not do, but it's to do with what the emotions are happening through the divorce that's going through. Hope that kind of answers, and hopefully anyone at the sound of my voice that really, really encourages. Of course, reach out to my service, even though it's focused specifically on the Black and Asian community. Frontline Therapist, we have a lot of white clients, have a lot of clients that don't fit. It's all about people who can't afford mainstream therapy. So if you feel like you want, therapy, but you can't afford it, we provide therapy at £30 per hour, and if you're on benefits or not working, £25 per session.
Brilliant, thank you. And where can people? And it was a brilliant answer. Thank you very much. And I also cannot condone enough therapy, and finding the right person is really, really important as well. So how can people find you if they or Frontline Therapy? Where can they go?
So I always say, come to Ngozi Cadmus first, because once you come to Ngozi Cadmus, you can then go to everything else. So FrontlineCadmus. I know Hannah's going to put it out on the podcast. Go to that page, follow that, and then go to Frontline Therapist or my other stuff. If you're a company and organization and you want therapy in your company, or you want me to work with your Black women or Black people to elevate them in leadership, I think it's better because that houses everything. But depending on what you want, support, help, we are very, very busy, but I do try to signpost as well. So if you're like, you want something else and you don't know, sometimes it's about you don't know what the right term to write in Google, just reach out and we'll try as much as possible to also signpost you, because I'm also aware that you might, we may not fit you. So there are so many services, maybe not as many as they could be, but there are services out that can support you. So just reach out to us. So Ngozi Cadmus, and then from there you can go to all of my other organizations that I run.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to kind of end on one point as well. Like, for someone who might be struggling right now, I have been I've come out of an abusive marriage. I've been in really difficult situations, and things do seem really permanent when you're in them. They do seem like they're going to go on. One day you will look back and this will be a long time ago, and you remember it, you remember the feelings, but you won't have those feelings as rawly as they are now. So, things aren't permanent, things do change,
yes.
and you won't always feel like you do.
100%.
But go and get help. That is really important. Thank you so much, Ngozi. That's such a really interesting conversation, and I hope that people get a lot from that. I certainly did.
Thank you so much, Hannah.